I met little Chonto in the chasm of my blonde years, a time when my heart was not as light as my hair color. I was constantly fucked up, and so was the music I was making. Trying to jumpstart my dying career, I put out a trio of super sexual albums. The Aries Varies, Low on the Totem Pole, and Super Sexual. And none of them did shit. So I fiddled around with the Luton crooner sound and puffed out this peaceful little thing in '77. And there was one song on there, one line really, that caught on with the aimless muckruck generation that came along right after the hippies. You can't untell a tale, you can't outslow a snail. And that one trendy little line was all it took. That's all it ever really takes. I was back on tour. Eventually, the popularity of this new album trickled down into South America. We were playing in one of the few dozen runt countries down there and acknowledged by the map makers and dictators. I can't remember the name of the place, just that they had this little perfume tree of leaves you could pull right off and smoke raw. And everywhere you went, everybody was smoking them, even the little children. And the medicine man smoked 10 at a time. My manager had snatched up my touring band real quick, an outfit out of Utah, and they drank milk and said golly while I mumbled fucks into an endless pint. We had some seriously different gods, me and them, and they didn't quite mesh. So I ended up making half friends with an old roadie named Rufus O'Dini. We used to spend all night sipping liquid Valium and throwing marshmallows into each other's mouths from across the room. And even though we shared the same chemical hobbies, I found him to be a genuinely annoying person. For one, no matter where we were, he spoke Spanish to every native he encountered. From Kenya to Siam, it was all por favor and gracias. Thankfully, his old Italian granny had taught him some kitchen tricks. He even kept a bottle of oregano in his shave kit. But because he was so obnoxious, I had to be mean to him from time to time in order to tolerate his company. So maybe it was all the meanness, or all the rich foods, but for some reason I was feeling as trapped as the bat and plastic some local fan had given me. I could only get through about a third of my set that night, and as the justified booze boomed around me, I stared at that beautiful dead creature and came to a realization. I needed animal company. Go and ask the bologna-stuffed bachelor grinding the gravel with his toe, and he'll tell you. Observe the calm of a single man with a single dog throwing the frisbee as the sirens slither by invisible to him, and you'll know, sometimes a man needs a dog. Of course, being a big shot, I decide I need a big shot dog. I need a monkey. So that's what I shouted out to my assistant. 2 hours up out of the city and we end up at one of the most wonderful places I've seen in all my travels. It was a zoo/religious theme park, and the whole holy cast was there. John and Jesus and Mary, and Hezekiah and Hubaliah too. Abba on a three-fingered doubting Thomas, Rufus, and all of his non-wisdom says to me, "Man, could this be any more sacrilegious?" This coming from a guy who shouted out, "Oh fucking Jesus, goddamn," every time he knocked over a mic stand or a pretty girl walked by. I checked out a bunch of these cream-colored Bible stories, and then I met up with the zookeeper, a very cool guy named Enrique, and he led me through the spider and lizard cage, aka El Infierno. Goddamn place was chock full of about 10 years worth of nightmare fodder. Out of hell, we stood before a classic nativity where they kept the chimps, and even though Enrique said it was too dangerous to go inside, I went in anyways because I wanted to show off for him. The bigger fellas looked more like pirates than pets to me, and I was about to give up on the whole thing altogether when I spotted little Chonto lying right there in Jesus' crib. He looked like peace itself. Enrique scooped him up for me, and man, this poor baby Jesus must have been crafted by the bucktooth apprentice 10 minutes before break time, because he looked like a transvestite potato. That song called Hot Talk. There ain't nothing wrong with that song. Wait, you hear something? Y'all hear something? You hear that? That's Monkey. That's my monkey. That's Chonto. That's my monkey. Looking back on all this, I really do wish there were more to it. I wish that Chonto and I crash landed on a desert isle and he threw a coconut at a fat poacher's head and killed him with it. But that didn't happen. Really, we just kicked it in my mansion, watching television and eating. And Chonto spent a lot of time fucking shit up. He just loved to do it. Being a millionaire, this wasn't really too big a deal. He'd do his thing in a room in my mansion, and I'd have the gardener seal it off with wax and stamp it with a big M for monkey. Of course, I knew Chonto was an ape by now. Had been booking it up like a small-town 11-year-old girl with glasses. But at the end of the day, I'm a poet unapologetic, and the word monkey is just stronger. Those books told me some frightful things, too. Told me he was 3 times stronger than me and could tear through a tiger's neck. But there were some things the books didn't tell me. They didn't tell me about the baby bugle farts that punctuated my days and nights. They didn't tell me about me entertaining the First Lady, gathering up all my class in good china for the event, and then Chonto swaggering in with a full-on boner. Basically, they didn't tell me how hilarious he'd be. In '79, centered in some softer terrain, I wrote a kids album. A Milk and Cookies tour followed in suit, and for my lazy manager's convenience, he got the same roadies, same bland band. Only Rufus thought it was going to be like old times with the Marshmallows, and got severely hurt feelings when he realized I preferred Chonto's silent company to his endless stream of sexist knock-knock jokes. He took me aside one evening, whispering like Chonto might understand English.
I think that monkey's hostile for me, man, for everybody.
What are you trying to tell me?
I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't think it's a good idea to have him around.
You trying to say you or him? I gotta pick?
If you want to put it like that, then...
Well then, Rufus, my choice is Chonto. Chonto every day and every week.
All right. This will be my last tour then. Good luck to you, Bobby.
And that was that. That's what I saw, and then I did what I had to do. I injected heroin into the monkey's head. I got 87 stitches across the ass and a legal prescription for codeine. The girl got a cast, 10 grand in cash, and a story for the tabloids. And when sweet little Chonto finally woke up, he got a court-ordered one-way ticket back to his old zoo in South America. And you know what Rufus, that fat fuck rat-beard motherfucker, says to me on the plane? I'm looking back at my dear Chonto, the both of us clearly heartbroken, and he says, "I told you so." The ultimate coward asshole know-it-all thing to say. And right at that moment he rocketed to the top of my list. The shit list. The second we land, I call up Enrique, and he tells me that the zoo's burnt down, that we're gonna have to put Chonto back in the jungle. We have to go deep inside. We'll go together. Safety in numbers. Es un verano tigre. What's that mean? Tiger summer. And what the hell's that mean? Tigers everywhere, man. We set out that night and I made Rufus come along to punish him for what he'd said on the plane. As we worked our way out there, you could hear the tigers growling all around us, those meat-hungry eyes catching the moonlight, eyes trained on us. Rufus was so scared walking around like this because he read somewhere that it scared off predators. And we stopped at the base of a craggy peak, and without even telling me he was going to do it, Enrique opened up the cage and Chonto disappeared so quick I didn't even see it happen. No glance back, no moonlit pose atop a boulder, just the sound of slapping leaves. Just gone. Then I heard a sound like fabric tearing and turned around quick. Rufus, keep your eyes closed. What is that shit? We got to get him back to the hotel fast. What happens if I open my eyes? He kept saying that over and over, in between all that weeping. And Enrique just kept saying, just keep them closed. I looked over and saw a drop of blood collecting in the corner of his eye, but I didn't tell him. When we got back, I attacked his beard and hair with a pair of scissors while Enrique called up the medicine man. Poor Rufus sat there crying with childlike dignity, but he wasn't overreacting. I could barely even stand the stuff on my fingers. When the Mescalito finally showed up, he took a bottle from his purse and poured it all over Rufus, everywhere the sap had touched, and it worked like magic, turned the goo all watery. After he finished, we invited him to stay for dinner, but he told us he didn't eat anymore and left with us on something victorious. Enrique, I'm sorry I laughed out there. I thought it was just goop.
That's okay. It looked funny.
The second the handle squeaked off, Enrique and I perked up like parents ready for the unveiling of their gussied up prom daughter. Rufus walked out, and all that gray hair gone, he looked a good 15, 20 years younger. I said the first thing that popped into my head. God damn, Rufus, how old are you?
I'm 24.
Do you see me?
Yes, sir.
Is it blurry or clean?
It's not blurry.
Good, come here. Sit down.
Am I gonna go blind, sir?
I don't think so. In the morning, we'll know for sure.
Okay.
Of course he said okay. What else could he say? Everything was all shut down now, but we three were hungry as hell and high on all kinds of awful adrenaline. So Enrique trusted throughout the land, borrowed the keys to the dining hall. While Rufus clanked around in the kitchen, Enrique and I polished off 2 bottles of an almond-based wine and found relevance in everything from the cobwebs in the corner to the bats chirping outside. Deep down in the second bottle, I even found a way to temporarily forget my guilt over making Rufus come into the jungle with us. Then the man himself came into the room, all fresh-headed, cooking sherry strong on his breath. He brought out 2 loaves of fresh bread full of mayonnaise and garlic and cheese, and a lunatic amount of spaghetti and meatballs, heavy on the olive oil, heavy on the basil. The taste was even better than the smell, and we ate in a prayer-like silence, grateful for the food, for our tongues, for the wine, grateful for the night itself. I looked over at Enrique. How's that measure up next to the old tamale? This is the best food I've ever had. Rufus, this is the best food of all time.
Gracias, Enrique.
But Rufus hadn't even touched his plate. It was too heavy with the fear of going blind. We were afraid of that too, so I refilled everybody's glasses. Cheers, I said. Cheers to Chonto, and cheers to the greatest, craziest animal of all. What's that? Enrique asked. And I looked at their ugly, drunken faces. That's us.
Humans.
No, just us, Rufus. Just us 3. The next morning, Rufus woke up with his 20/20 vision intact and a 15% raise.